So looking at round 3 results, we see that the points weren't as high this round as compared to round 1 and 2, which is typical because round 3 is usually a building round. Now, any points above 300 in round 3 is doing very well. So there's only 3 teams who scored less than that. Now, gross profit margins is the biggest key here. So you started off at 40%. So the top teams are in the 50% range, which is typical for completing round 3. Now, round 4, you want to be at 55 or 60% gross profit margins if you can. Teams down here in the 40% range, you haven't improved your profit margins too tremendously since round 1. And that is a big problem for investors and the reason why your stock price isn't going up and the reason why your points are not increasing. So how do you increase gross profit margins? Stay tuned till the end of this video where I go over that information a little bit more closely. Stock price has gone up for all teams. Our return on equity, total points. Return on equity has been doing well for most teams. Total points. So this is round 3. So if you're at you need 2,500. So all teams are doing well in points. All teams are well on their way, averaging, you want to average at least 1,300 points to be on track. So all teams have above 1,300 points. So all teams are, on average, earning the points they need to earn each round to get the full score in the project. This team at 1,900 is almost there, and they have 3 more rounds to collect points. So they're doing very well. Operating profit margins is a function of how efficient your marketing is. If you overspend on marketing, that could hurt your operating profit margins, but having higher gross margins will naturally lift your operating profit margins, as well as your net profit margins, which can be improved by reducing debt, but also by increasing gross profit margins because it trickles down. Now, return on assets and total asset turnover is how efficient you use your assets. So if you're buying assets that are unused, such as factories you don't need, that could pull your return on assets down. Your sales per round, you should be looking at the student user guide very closely to help you to better forecast your sales. And again, total asset turnover is about your assets, turning your assets into sales. Okay, so these are all basic financial ratios that you could look up in the textbook that we covered in chapter 3, and you should be a little bit more familiar with. If we go into just look at the industry charts, you can see for as far as net profits per team, you can see most teams have increased their net profits, except for one team where they let their net profits slide. So this team should really be looking at the industry page to see what the other teams are doing, get a better idea or sense of how to put that together a little bit better. And you can see that one team has made very good, very consistent. This team here has really been a good comeback story. As far as points per team, you can see that points are a little bit lower as they typically are in round 3, but points should pick up again in 4, 5, and 6. And stock price, we have the same leader in stock price as we had the last 2 rounds, but we have a clear second place stock position now, and we have a 3-way tie here for 3rd place. Okay, and sales per team, we also have the same team as number 1 in sales, so we have the same consistent, but everybody's improved in sales, which is good. So let's look at, now remember last video I was reviewing, entering in the information for round 3. So at round 3 I started out with 584 points, and then as you should read over your assessments to get an idea of how you're doing and ideas of how to improve your score. Review your charts, your industry, see what the competitors are doing, maybe you can get some ideas from the competitors about improving your score. You can review your financials, which we learned in chapter 3. And then in the sales page, which you saw me fill out last year, I worked really hard to try to increase my profit margins, but it was difficult because of the ever-increasing customer expectations. So maybe if I increase my sales price here, I will get a better, higher gross profit margin. So I'm going to increase my sales price there a little bit. Let's see. Okay, so I'm trying to get a higher profit margin in all of my categories than the previous round. So that might call for modifying some of my results. And I see that truck is difficult to get a higher profit margin, and also luxury. All right, and I'm limited to only 35%. So I'm going to modify a couple of things here to try and get my profit margin higher. So it's been a challenging round. Then, of course, I got to analyze my marketing a little bit more closely and make sure that when I do my marketing, I'm spending properly, which I'm going to do a little bit. I'm going to pause because it takes a long time to do this. But I see, where I left off last round, I see the marketing range has increased, and I'm going to have to, factor that into next year. Now, I don't want to overspend or underspend on marketing because that's going to affect my demand. Now, on my production page, here, 30, I'm going to try and actually have a little shortage here because I don't want to buy another production plant, because that's an asset that's going to be hard to pay for. And then here I'm going to have to buy 2 production plants, and it's going to be a little inefficient because I'm not going to have as high a capacity as I would like. Capacity utilization, something that maybe you look up, figure out what is capacity utilization. It's very important for the production page. So as I'm also increasing my operational investments, and I'm just going a little slow at first to see how much money I have, because I don't want to but I don't have a deficit. So I'm just kind of slowly increasing that. Okay, so let's submit that and see my finance page. Okay, so now the finance page, the first thing I'm going to look at is my surplus. So I have a decent surplus, so I'm going to go back to production, and I'm going to increase the spending on my operational, because this is going to help me to increase my profits by reducing my costs in the next round. All right, so let me submit my production data. Now on the finance page, I'm going to look to see now what is my new. Still have a pretty high surplus, so I'm going to pay back some debt. Nope, can't pay that much back. All right, and this will help some of my scores on my debt ratios, and buy back some stock. It's a common thing companies do. Okay, so I look at I'm increasing my sales, I'm increasing my profits, and I still have a surplus. So I'm going to complete year 3, just like you did in the simulation, and see how I did. Okay, so I generated 467 points, which is above the 425 points I like to generate each round. And you see that my profit margins went up slightly, only by 2 points or 1 point, because the round is a building round, so it's hard to always, in year 3, to have much higher profit margins. But as I'm buying those operational investments, I got 82 points for increasing my operational investments and 100 points for having a surplus. Now, as I move into the next round, I could see on the sales page I have an even larger cost reduction. So this will help me to keep my profit margins higher. So as I build for round 4, like you're doing, now I can build the car and get higher. See, now I'm jumping from 57 to 67%. So I'm going to have a much higher profit margin, and that's what I'm aiming for as I'm building these new cars out. I'm looking to increase my characteristics to make my cars more desirable than last year because you want to show improvement here. All right, and this, let me do at least 60 here, and then so again, I'm getting those profit margins up, which is what is needed. And if you don't make those operational cost reductions, you're not going to be able to get those profit margins up. So again, in each category, I'm trying to increase what my car offers to get a better sense of, get the customers to like my car more, get my demand up, but at the same time, I want my profit margins higher. So I'm trying to accomplish both things. And you can see here on this car, I didn't get it up as much as I wanted to. So I'm going to have to modify things a little bit to get that profit margin higher. But at least I'm shooting for at least 3%, if not 5% higher on most things. So as the customer expectations go up, I have to initially increase the features to keep my car competitive. And you can see here that on the, I need to buy more operational investment, cost reductions, because I'm having a hard time with my luxury car getting it into that desirable range. So I can kind of play with some of my, lowering some of my statistics here to try. And if I make enough operational investments, then I should be able to please the customers, but yet also salvage my demand. All right. So it looks like I need to do some work on the luxury car to get those profit margins up. All right. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. I don't want to do the whole all of round 4, but now I think I've given you a better idea of what you can do in round 4 to increase your points and how to lower your costs, increase your profit margins, and then you always want to also be increasing your sales. Okay, so with that being said, we could see here that I did increase my points in my revenue, my profit margin, my debt ratios increased because I paid down debt, my profit margins increased, but my total asset turnover and return on assets were lower because I bought a lot of assets this round that I wasn't able to really generate as much sales from them as I want, but I will in later rounds and get those points back in later rounds. Return on equity is naturally going to suffer a little bit when you pay down debt. And my forecasts were not perfect, so I lost some points in forecasts. So, but again, I'm just striving to get over 400 points per round, so I did succeed. And if you look at my total points so far I have 1,800 points, which is getting me very close to 2,500. Okay, so I hope you found this video helpful in now working on year 4. Good luck in year 4, and we'll see how we do after that. Thank you.